city, how to prevent hate and racial discrimination. We are working, we had a conference last year and following up with the different groups. And that's all I can say now. And I'm here to listen.
Gopal Bhai, I'm sorry to disturb you. There is a technical need I have. So we are going live just to broadcast that on YouTube. So I'll have to post the YouTube link for everyone. So anyone who is looking for, how to join this from without Zoom, then this will be the link. So let me put that on the chat. So a little bit of logistics things I need to take care. Sorry for that. So here is a direct link to where we would go live. This is the second link I just posted on the chat. Please send it out to others. I am going to do the same to the OSA group so that others can join in from OSA, from across North America.
Yeah. Let's see that.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Maya. Hi, Kuku. Hey, Mita.
Hello. Hello, hello, hello.
Okay, so we are live on YouTube right now. And 1 more minute to go. Yeah. So as participants join in, all of you will be muted by me. If you have to speak anything, you have to unmute yourself. We would like your cameras to be turned on, but mics to be turned off. Only when you have to speak, either unmute or post it on chat. We would prefer you posting your questions via chat. Maya would be looking at the chat for your questions as she finishes her presentation. Ashok and I will also be monitoring this, and I will be explicitly taking care of the questions posted on YouTube. We are live on Odisha Society of the Americas YouTube channel. So if you go and subscribe, we'll get a notification that now we are live. Or I have also posted a shortcut link directly. So please follow that. Okay. So it's 10 o'clock. Kukupa, over to you.
You scared me, Utkar, by saying 10 o'clock. I'm just kidding. Pacific time, we are at 7 o'clock. Thank you, Utkar.
Why don't we wait 2 minutes and just in case people are still coming, and we can start at like 7:02, 7:03.
Okay, great. Thank you, Maya. I've been talking for last 5 hours and I really need that 2 minutes. Thank you so much.
Yes, just for you.
Great.
Oh my God.
So
While waiting, how are you doing, everyone? Kemti achanti?
Good.
We are good, Kukuba. How are you?
Good, 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 good. आमे सबू बहुत different काम पाई एकठी होचे, but I'm so proud for why we are going to meet all with you all. It's a different completely. We want to educate us and we'll go over that. Let's wait for a couple of minutes. We'll go over that.
Why? Oh, there are 20 pages. Oh, I did not.
So again, just to remind, we have clusters of youths joining from Georgia Odia Society, as well as from Washington, DC, and other parts of North America. So it's going way beyond California now. So thank you and welcome to all the folks coming from all around North America to join us today.
I said thank you, everyone, specifically those who are joining us from East Coast and from our Central Time. Little late, no, you young folks, you don't sleep early. So glad to see you all over here.
Kuku, you can start. I think, what do you think?
So Maya, no, I'm just waiting for Maya to show me the green signal. So if Maya is ready, we are ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, we'll start now, Maya. Okay, great, good. Good evening, everyone. How are you doing?
Good.
Great. So over the last couple of weeks, we witnessed the negative effect of racism and police brutality in this country. As an organization and community, we believe that it is important to voice that Black Lives Matter. It is important to understand what is happening around us, and in an effort to educate ourselves, we have decided to create this platform. We should not stay silent. Without any further delays, I'm very proud our own Maya Acharya is here today, and I am asking the Vice President of OSA, California, to take over now onwards.
Thank you, Kokopa. Thank you for such a great introduction to what's going on in this history. And we are so fortunate that to have Maya here, who initiated the discussion on what can we do and what can we bring forward to the youth. And it's a definitely great moment for us. This is like a, sorry, I was going into Odia, but I think this is the youth are not here. So let's go into English, and pardon me on that one. So let me introduce Maya, and it's like she is a student of history at Stanford and is a music maker. They have led workshops and events on justice through the arts through their work at Institute of Diversity in the Arts. That's actually a part of the Stanford University system. They also work on projects for queer writers of color. And for your information, Maya also have recorded some music and songs in Spotify if you want to track her. So she's pretty popular. She's a pretty popular figure, and we are lucky to have her here. And hope that we all who are have not studied here will learn something that we have not studied throughout our system. So it's a pretty good group of people that is a combination of young as well as adults that will be going to learn something here. And with that, I welcome Maya to present it. Maya Acharya. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that intro. I'm going to share my screen really quick so you can all see a presentation. All right, do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Yep, see it.
Cool. Okay, thank you all for being here, especially people from the East Coast. I know it's late for all of you. I want to thank, first of all, my parents for listening to everything I've had to tell them over the past years and over the past couple of weeks in particular, and then going out on their own and sharing that with their communities. And then Sarita Auntie and Kuku Auntie for then reaching out to me to lead this discussion. I'm really, really proud of our community for being here tonight and being willing to talk about this. So Kuku Auntie made a great point yesterday that we should take advantage of the momentum that we have right now and start the conversation in our community sooner rather than later. So we just decided yesterday to put this event on today. And so what I'm hoping to do is really start the conversation and introduce a lot of the topics that as a community we'll have to learn about and discuss together to go further. But we don't really have the space today to go really deep into any of the topics that we'll need to learn. So we're hoping that we can do a series of these events and we can keep the conversation going and we can take a lot of baby steps towards justice, but take them quickly. So I think are you still able to see the presentation or no?
Yes, we can see it, but it's small.
Yeah. Okay. I think that while I'm presenting, I'm not going to be able to see the Zoom chat. So maybe my parents can, or anyone who's down to monitor the Zoom chat. If you see questions there, you can just feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt me throughout the presentation if there are clarifying questions. I want this to be like a discussion, so definitely if you have clarifying questions about things that I'm sharing, feel free to bring those up. And then we'll have some time at the end. I'm hoping this will be around an hour, and we'll have some time at the end for kind of broader questions, reflections, and then we can talk about action items together. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the history of police violence against Black people in the US. And we're going to think about how our Odia communities can and must take concrete actions towards anti-racism. So here's a really quick agenda. Again, we're not going to go into anything too deeply, but we'll do a quick history of the Black Lives Matter movement, talk about the connections to the civil rights movement, a history of the US police and its ties to slavery in the United States. Hopefully we can get to a beginning of an understanding of why it is that police in the US seem to protect property rather than people. I want to talk a lot about what is going on right now, why there's so much controversy over current protests, and why police officers and military and the National Guard are being brought in. And then we'll have some time for reflection and action items. So the Black Lives Matter movement was started by Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi in 2013 in response to Trayvon Martin's murderer, George Zimmerman, being acquitted. And one thing I want to point out is in recent years, every single time that we open the news and see another push for justice for Black people and the violence that they face, it's often because another unarmed Black person has been killed by the police or has been killed by a white supremacist who isn't charged. And I want us to reflect on that and think about our responsibility to fight for Black lives while they're still alive, and not always continue to let it get to a point where someone has to die in such a brutal way for us to pay attention. So I've listed just a few of the many, many, many Black people who have been killed by white supremacy and killed by the US police. You might recognize from the past few months the names Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd. But there are so many others. And I think one important thing for me has been spending time learning their names and learning their stories. And I invite all of you to spend some time doing that too. Because for me, that has reminded me of my duty to continue to fight for Black people while they're still alive and not let this list continue to grow. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the US police, because I think that can help us understand why we're at this place where there's so much police violence against Black people and other communities, and why it seems that the police in our country is like very different and a lot more violent than the police in many other countries. So to truly, this is going to be very surface level. We're not going to go all the way into this history. But if we did want to do that deep dive, we'd have to go all the way back to the beginning of when the transatlantic slave trade brought Black people as enslaved people to this country. And you'd have to go all the way back to 1619, and maybe in a future discussion we can do that. But the police forces that we know today can in part be traced back to what were called slave patrols from the slavery era. And these patrols, their job was to go capture Black people who had escaped from their oppressors and violently return them to their white oppressors or slave masters. And a more direct link to the police departments of today, we can think about the first publicly funded police department in Boston in the 1800s. And Boston is a port city, and their explicit goal was to protect merchants and their property. So these are just a few points in police history that I wanted to bring out. And the reason I wanted to highlight these is because they help me understand why it is that when I look at police in the country today, and especially police in their response to protesters today, why it is that the police seem more concerned with doing whatever it takes to protect property, even if that means hurting people. Yeah, let's look at just a few things about police today. This is a chart has data from 2015, but it's still very relevant. That shows that unarmed Black people were killed by police at 5 times the rate at unarmed white people in 2015. Another statistic that stands out to me is that of people in the United States who are murdered by strangers, they are killed by police. A third of them are killed.
We can see your screen.
Maya, we can see your screen. The chart you show right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We can see it.
I can see it. I'm
fine.
able to see it fine.
We can
see it too.
We can see it.
We
can
can
see it.
See it as well.
Okay. Okay. Figure it out, Mom. Or come upstairs and yeah. So those are 2 statistics that stand out to me. Another one is I would very much encourage us all to go look into police budgets in the towns we live in, the cities we live in, local big cities that are like near us that we might not live in. This is just one example of the police budget in Oakland. And when you compare it to the money that goes to other very, very important funds for human safety, including human services and affordable housing, the police get so much more money than them. And when I'm thinking about looking at police budgets, another thing that I want us all to keep in mind, and this will be relevant to some of us and not relevant to others, but for me, I grew up in Los Altos, which is a Bay Area suburb, and it's pretty wealthy, very white. And for me growing up, I didn't see police a lot. Like there's a police department in Los Altos, I would see them occasionally, but they're not like very actively out especially in residential areas, policing. And I want us to think about who we think deserves to be actively policed and who is spared that. And very often like richer people or communities that are more predominantly white don't feel that they need to be actively policed. Whereas if you go to poorer areas or areas with a lot of Black or Latinx people, police are just always in the streets patrolling, trying to charge, teenagers with doing things that maybe all of us have done at some point, like maybe smoking a cigarette before we're 18 or loitering or something like that. Yeah, I just want to think about who we think deserves to be policed and why it is that police in certain areas have such big budgets. Another budget that shows how stark police budgets are. This is the LA mayor's proposed budget for 2021. You can see the police department in the last row, and then other incredibly important public services, including transportation, so much smaller. And one thing to think about is we know that a lot of times police officers will charge and even arrest people for doing things such as riding the bus without paying for fare. And so when we think about that and we look at the distance between the police budget and the transportation budget, I think one question we can ask is, why are we spending so much money charging people for riding the bus without paying when we could maybe just be paying for them to ride the bus, right? Oh, this all came at once. Okay. So I want to draw a few connections from the movements that are going on today back to the civil rights movements of the 50s and 60s. Again, extremely rich and deep history that has been written about by so many Black scholars. So let's all commit to spending more time learning about that together. But just a few things that I wanted to highlight. I can't see all of my notes, but yeah, Black-led movement in the 50s and 60s against legalized discrimination. One important thing I want to note that kind of echoes what's going on today is whether protesters during the civil rights movement were peaceful or not, they faced incredibly violent responses from both police and like white racist civilians, including things like water cannons, which are extremely powerful and can cause a lot of harm. Violent police dogs were sicked onto quote unquote peaceful protesters. So when we think about what we consider to be a peaceful protester or not, we also have to consider the fact that regardless of what protesters are doing, police have historically been justified in incredibly violent responses. And as we know, a lot of movement leaders of the civil rights movement were assassinated, including Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. One little highlight of the civil rights movement that is relevant to our communities, one of the many victories of the civil rights movement was the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. And before this act, there was kind of de facto discrimination against immigration from non-white countries. So there wasn't a lot of, there was some immigration from South Asia, but not anywhere like the numbers today. And it was because of the passing of the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 that most of us were able to move here today. All of our families who've moved here after 1965, 100% have the civil rights movement to thank for the fact that we were able to immigrate here for our goals and for whatever purposes we wanted to. Yeah, so that is one small highlight that shows the truth, which is that the civil rights movement, like many Black-led movements, including the protests happening today, brought more justice for all. And alongside that, there are countless Indian Americans and other South Asian Americans who have learned strategies for their goals from Black activists in the US. There are lots of examples that we can talk about it in future discussions maybe, but just one that I wanted to highlight today is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He was a Dalit leader. Dalits are the group of people left out of the caste hierarchy in South Asia. You might otherwise have heard of them as untouchables, but Dalit is their self-chosen name. And Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was a Dalit leader and also the author of the Indian Constitution. And he did his graduate studies at Columbia University. And during his work, he corresponded by letters with W.E.B. Du Bois, who is a prominent Black sociologist, activist, and writer during the civil rights movement. And W.E.B. Du Bois communicated with Dr. Ambedkar that he knew about the Dalit struggles in India and was in solidarity with Dalits. So as we keep thinking about Dr. Ambedkar's connections to race in the US, between race in the US and caste in India, we should all think about the ways that we've internalized racism as well as casteism. I'm gonna pause right here. Are there any questions that have come up so far? Or should I keep going? Keep going?
I think you can keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I realized that this point about thinking about race in the US and caste in India might be a new topic to a lot of us. And so I have one article that I've picked that I really would encourage all of us to start reading. Maybe that's like the first article that we read after this discussion. And this is an article by Thenmozhi Sundararajan, who's a Dalit American activist. And she wrote an article directed towards Indian Americans and other South Asian Americans advocating for us to take action in the movement for Black lives. And in her article, she makes really good comparisons between casteism and racism and reminds us that as we think about unlearning our anti-Blackness, that also means that we have to think about caste and unlearning ways that we have internalized anti-Dalitness. And yeah, she posts a lot of great content about how we can think through this. If you want to follow her on Instagram, she's Dalit Diva. Okay, so that is kind of the history that I wanted to highlight. I obviously did not go very deep into any of those things, and I encourage all of us to research any of those topics, and I'll provide reading lists afterwards for all of the topics that I just did a surface level description of. And so now I want to spend more time talking about what is going on right now, and why there's so much controversy over the protests. So the protests that are happening right now, I'm sure many of us know a lot of these details, but they started in Minneapolis as protests led by Black youth and Black activists in Minneapolis against the death of George Floyd, who was murdered by 4 police officers in Minneapolis. And the Minneapolis Police Department has been, for the past years, incredibly violent. And the activists who led these protests have been working to abolish the Minneapolis Police Department for years. So this wasn't just like one event and then these protests started. It was a culmination of a lot of violence that these activists were able to use the fact that George Floyd's death got attention to bring attention to the widespread violence. And so you might have seen in the news things about how these protests have led to property destruction. Like some protesters have started, maybe robbing local businesses while they're protesting at night and things like that. One thing that I want to highlight is that property can be replaced while Black lives cannot be replaced. So while you might have mixed feelings about a protester, breaking into a business and robbing it during the protests, let's remember that while we can have mixed feelings about that, we should agree that the response to someone breaking into a business and robbing it should not be that they get shot by the police, right? Because we have laws in place for what is okay and what the punishments are for different crimes, and robbery is not punishable by death, and we should not let our police departments indiscriminately kill people because they're robbing a store. And I would really, really encourage people to do their own research into and look at the countless videos that have been circulating the web showing the police brutality against protesters, because a lot of these videos are not making it to the news for whatever reason. And there are countless instances of police doing things like shooting rubber bullets at people's heads, which is incredibly violent. There was a young Black teenager in Austin who now has severe head injuries and severe brain damage because while he was peacefully protesting, he was shot in the head by a rubber bullet by Austin police. So if you ever hear things about like rubber bullets not being lethal, while that in most cases might be true, they do cause significant harm. And we should all really question why police departments across the country have been allowed to use things like tear gas, which is forbidden in wars, and rubber bullets against protesters. I really liked this tweet that I included here because really the police departments across the country are kind of showing themselves and laying bare the violence that they're willing to enact on all the people for doing things just like protesting brutality against Black people. This is a sign from a protest that I thought encapsulated it really well. Yeah, so again, there are just countless people. I think the last time I checked, the number of folks who had been killed during the protests, whether killed by police or not, were 18. And very many of those have been killed by police officers. So yeah, I live in the Bay Area, and there's 2 cases of police officers brutalizing protesters that I want to highlight because they have affected me very deeply. There was a man in Richmond who was accused by police officers of looting a store, and he was kneeling and surrendering himself to the police, and police shot him through the windshield of their car and killed him. His name is Sean Monterosa. Another example, just a couple days ago in Hayward, California, a Black teenager had been doing a project with friends unrelated to the protests, and he was in his car, and when he saw the looting and the violence happening around him, he tried to drive away. And police officers saw him and saw he was a Black man and racially profiled him as a looter, and again shot him through the back of his car. And he is thankfully recovering, but his lungs were punctured. And he's also facing charges from the police because they're considering his car to be a weapon, and they're saying by him driving away, he was an armed looter. Yeah, this is some statements by this teenager's mother, who reminds us that not only does he have physical wounds, but also the mental wounds of being brutalized by the police in this way. Yeah, so one of the questions that I've had for myself, and that I think my parents and a lot of their friends have been asking, which is what led to this discussion, is what can we do? Like, we are becoming increasingly aware every year of the fact that there is some injustice going on with our judicial system and our police system. And it seems like we maybe don't have the power to change any of that. And also sometimes it feels like the problem is separate from us and far away from us, and we can kind of ignore it. Yeah. I want to bring up this quote by Angela Davis, where she says, "In a racist society, it is not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist." And I think I hope and I think that everyone who's here today believes that along with me. And that's why we're here, because we ourselves might not feel like we are actively contributing to the system, but we are lucky enough to have have opportunities that are provided to us by living in this country. And it is therefore our duty to fight against racism in this country. So what must we do? I'm going to present some action items that I have thought about and come up with. And then what I want to do is open up a discussion where we can reflect on what we've talked about today, ways that we've seen racism in our own lives, and action items that we would like to add to the list. Okay, so here's some that I've come up with. First of all, we definitely should keep having these conversations. I really am so happy with the fact that we have Ordiyas from across the country here. But also, like, keep having these, like, let's keep doing this, but let's also have these, like, with our parents, with our kids, in our local communities, with other Indian Americans around us who might not be Ordiya. Yeah, let's keep this going. And with your communities and your households and neighborhoods around you, consider creating safety plans that avoid calling the police. As we've seen over and over, police will brutalize anyone, and police have something called qualified immunity, which means that they're very often not charged for instances where they injure or kill people in their line of duty. And so to truly keep the people around us safe and truly not put them in police harm's way, it can be a really useful thing to just avoid bringing the police into the situation. And I understand that might be really difficult if there aren't alternatives to policing around you. So I really encourage you to start having conversations with your household and maybe your neighbors and the streets around you to think about, for different situations where you might call the police but you don't have to, what are other things that you can do and other ways that you can take care of each other so that you don't bring the police into the situation. One of the easiest things we can do is find people who are already doing important work around us and donate any money that we might be able to them. So I would suggest mutual aid funds and bail funds. Mutual aid funds are community-led funds that allow community members to donate money and then request money as they're needed and able to. They've always been around, but a lot of them have been getting super visible due to the pandemic. I know in the Bay Area, there are a lot of mutual aid funds that I learned about at the beginning of the pandemic because I was trying to figure out how I could support people around me who were losing work and not getting the support that they needed. So research mutual aid funds local to you and mutual aid funds also local to the protesters closest to you. And if anyone wants help researching that in their local vicinity, I'm happy to help. And we also should be donating to bail funds, which in my opinion, we should always be doing, but now in the time of the pandemic and in the time of the protests is especially important. An average of 70% of people in local jail have not been convicted of a crime. Very, very often people will sit in jail for days, months, or even years without ever before they're able to get their trial to get convicted. So that means there are people who have not done anything wrong sitting in jail. And a lot of this is because of the unfair bail system, where some folks might be able to get out of jail if they could post up a few $1,000s, and that is very inaccessible for a lot of people. Also, a lot of people might not actually be aware of the fact that they could get out of jail on bail because they don't have adequate legal representation. And especially now during the pandemic, we've seen that housing situations where people are living close together, there allows for a much more widespread transmission of COVID. And in jails, this is especially true, right? Because people are living extremely close together. And so, yes, it's always problematic, especially during the pandemic. So I would really encourage all of us to look into local bail funds, preferably Black-led funds, because this makes sure that Black people have access to the funds and they're not yeah.
Hi, Maya.
Yeah.
There are some questions going on in the Zoom group chat. Do you want to attend one or two of them, or you want to keep it to the end?
Yeah, let's hear some questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll make more interesting. So one question is from Milan Naik and asking that in terms of actually making a change in legislation and policy making, would you suggest actually calling, emailing our local and state politicians?
Yes, absolutely. That is one I did not include in the list, and that we should add to our community list 100%. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. One big success that happened today, just today in Minneapolis, the Minneapolis City Council, I think 9 out of their 13 members signed something today that says that they have committed to disbanding the Minneapolis Police Department. So that shows that protesting works and calling works, and we can work together to make that change. So yeah, absolutely, that's a great action.
Maya, can I add one thing to that? This is Pratik Dash. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I just wanted to add for Milan, feel free to connect with me in the chat. So I do a lot of work in the South with policy and legislation change. I'm happy to connect you with groups that are focused on Asian and South Asian communities making change on these matters. So I'll put my email address in the chat, but if anyone else wants to learn more, I'm happy to be a resource.
Sweet, thank you.
Maya, sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I ask you a question, like to you specifically? Like this
I
is
was going to say, my name.
I don't know. Can I ask you a question that might relate to you a bit more specifically?
Sure.
It's a little opinion based. So it's like, you said that there were a couple violent protesters here and there in certain areas that were looting stores and whatever. You know, that happens during every protest. And, you know, some people call for peaceful protest, other people call for violent protest. And I suppose the violent protesters don't really care if you're being peaceful. But do you think the peaceful protesters, or like the peaceful Black Lives Matter leaders, do you think they have like a responsibility, or do you think they should disavow the violent ones?
No, I don't think it's my place to make that call. I think it's their place because they are the ones leading their movement and know strategically whether publicly disavowing that will help them reach their goals or not. So that's one thing I'll say. Another thing I'll say is I have seen countless videos and myself experienced instances of of folks protesting completely peacefully and police attacking them with tear gas, rubber bullets, batons. And for that reason,
I just want to add in real quick, sorry, in case people don't realize, sorry, this is Swati from LA. In case people don't realize, rubber bullets don't just mean that they're rubber. They're very often real bullets that have rubber around them. So it's not just like something that bounces like a ball. It's very, very dangerous.
Oh yeah, no, it's still coming at you like 30 miles per hour, like 50 miles per hour, whatever. I don't know how fast it is, but that thing, anything moving that fast will hurt like hell.
But I'm just saying it's steel. Like it's not, it's intended to harm someone, not to give them a bruise, you know? So it's not small.
Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. I just wanted, that was a purely opinion based. There was no right or wrong with that one.
I think there was another question that someone had started to ask, maybe.
Yes, there is one more from Ritanjali that I'm seeing right now is that also guys, feel free to ask, you know, but I'm just trying to read it. It's from Ritanjali. A friend of mine shared her police neighbor, good one, being harassed for the work done by corrupt ones. Should we be stereotyping all cops? Student body left and student body right movements could hurt innocents. I prefer asking the corrupt ones.
So first of all, I will say that we all have a right to free speech, and we all have a right to say if someone is participating in a system that we think is bad, we have a right to tell them that. And a police officer getting harassed for participating in that system doesn't really measure up to folks being injured and killed by the system. And I think that anti-Blackness in police systems is something that what I kind of was trying to show through the history of the police, but maybe we can go deeper into this topic next time. Anti-Blackness is not something that individual police officers bring into the system, but is something that is baked into the system itself. So I think if you truly believe that someone you know is maybe a police officer who has good intentions, I think what I would invite is, well, then maybe what we need to do is dismantle the system, this corrupt police system that inherently targets Black people and other marginalized people, and create a new community safety system together. And the folks that are police officers who have good intentions are more than welcome to, in this next system, be a part of that conversation and be a part of future security things. It's, it's not really helpful. Quote unquote good police officers don't actually have the power to change the actions of police officers who have internalized racism, and don't have the power to change the system that itself targets Black people. So therefore, continuing to participate in the police as a police officer in the police system means that you are signing on to all of that racism, and therefore, if people want to protest you doing that, that is 100% their right.
Well, this is one more question that Atasi Kontayat wants to ask you. Atasi, can you please unmute yourself and ask?
Yeah, hi there. Hi, Maya, Satsinani.
Hi, Satsinani.
Hi. So I'm sorry, I have a screaming baby in the back. I hope you can hear me. So, or see me too, actually. But yeah, so I just, I've been thinking about all this since it's been happening, and I know there's been a lot of calls to like defund the police and all this kind of stuff. I'm just kind of wondering, if the solution is to like not use the police as much. I don't know if that's really the best way to go about it, versus I think there needs to be like a change, like you said just a minute ago, in the type of people that are choosing to go into that profession, because not everybody is cut out for everything. So I feel like there's a lot of people that are in the police profession that shouldn't be there because they don't have the right temperament, and if you are the type of person that, like, let's say you've been chasing someone for 2 hours and you've been chasing after them, they're still running away from you, then they throw a bottle at you and then you catch them. If you don't have the restraint to be able to just like lay off and just handcuff them and take them away without like hitting them back or getting mad at them for what they put you through, then this is not the right job for you. And I think that's probably the better way, I think, to handle the police situation right now, as opposed to just like, get rid of all police. You know what I mean? Like that's
actually, yeah.
Yeah,
you for your
whoever just
question.
spoke, sorry to interrupt, but this is Ritanjali. You just read my question right before this. But whoever just spoke, I completely agree with her, because we need to fix the system rather than going after those individuals like who are good and so on. But let's fix the system. And I love the quote you shared, Maya, earlier, that we need to be the anti-racist. So at the grassroots level, we need to preach that and practice it at every family, every household, everywhere. If we follow those things, I think we'll make a big difference as well.
So I'd like to
I'd like to add something too. This is Fern Panda, and I'm living in Minnesota in the Twin Cities, and I've watched countless hours of all the protests and everything that's that's been going on here. But I think part of the police problem has been that the police union in lots of these cities have been so strong, and that's the case in Minneapolis, that they protect the policemen, and it's very hard to make changes. So any kind of changes that the city council or anybody wants to make, it's being very stymied by the police union. So I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why they're talking about dismantling the police department, is that you kind of stop some of those ingrained habits, or because they really can't get by some of the restrictions or rules that they have. So that's part of it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for all those comments. Hi, friend Maya. It's good to see you here. Okay, let me go back to first what Atasinani shared. Yeah. So my response, I think actually maybe you misinterpreted one thing about what I said. I actually believe that there are cops who you believe do have the right temperament for to be a police officer, that they would be welcome to partake in whatever the new system is. But the system as it stands, and you're welcome to look this up, or I can share some links afterwards, but there are countless examples across the country of so-called good police officers trying to bring attention to their colleagues who are doing wrong, or stop their colleagues from doing wrong in the moment. And they are harassed by their colleagues, they are fired, they get no protection. And so the system as it stands protects quote unquote bad cops and not good cops. So there really is no way to, like, there's no way to protect those very few folks who are a good enough cop to want to fix the system. Because I personally would believe that if you truly believe someone is a good cop, that doesn't just mean that they themselves are not racist. It means that they are actively trying to stop other cops who are racist. And that does not happen a lot. And when it does happen, those cops are often fired. So that is why I personally believe we need to dismantle the system and create a new one. Yeah. And like Fernmai said, yeah, police unions have a ton of power. And that is another reason why folks who try to speak out are often silenced or fired. And yeah, that is why the Minneapolis City Council is making steps towards dismantling the police.
And Maya, I think this is great with your second point about creating safety plans that avoid calling the police. I think we should consider what the function of the police even is, and the material conditions that have been created through decades and centuries of violence against Black people that create conditions that people, have to commit, and I hate the word crime because there's a gaze about it, but have to commit certain actions to even survive in the system. And there are resources that are continually defunded every single year that are much better alternatives than calling the police. Mental health resources, behavioral health, I mean, social workers, public health, you name it. Those Children's people have education. children's, yeah, exactly. Like there are, and I think I encourage everyone to consider why even the police have a function when there are so many other alternatives that we can go to before even considering any of these other criminal and carceral activities. And that's why I encourage everyone to stop thinking about this good apple, bad apple analogy and just think about, like, why do you even call the police? Like, who is it helping and who is it serving?
I also
see who's speaking right now, but thank you for that.
Yeah, shout out to you, Maya, for putting this together. It's awesome.
Who's speaking right now?
Sorry, my name is Shilpi. I'm from the Nashville group, although I'm kind of a nomad. But yes.
Okay,
I also
completely. Yeah.
I also want to add one more piece, Maya, and again, also shout out to you. This is Pratik Dash, also from Nashville. You're getting a lot of love from the South right now. I want to add one more piece that first bullet of talking to other people and having conversations, I don't want to gloss over that. That is so important. And uncles, aunties, namaskar, it's good to see you all, oriki, whatever I need to say, all the formalities, but it's so important. Like my mother and father respect so many of you all on this call. And if you all are having those conversations with my mom and dad, your word is just as powerful as mine. And so I think like before we even think about all this stuff about calling our legislators and doing all this stuff, like for everyone who is first generation on this call, I would challenge each of you to have this conversation with another first generation person who's not on the call. I think that's like an easy first step to take, because it's sometimes as a second generation person, it's so difficult for me to try and talk to you all about it because I feel intimidated. I feel like I don't know the culture that well. And I lived in Bhubaneswar for 5 years very recently, and I still feel that I don't know the culture that well, and I don't feel inserted into the culture as much as you all are. So if you all who are in the in circle, who are the most Odia that I wish I could be every day, if you all have those conversations with other Odia folk, you all are the ones who are going to make this change. So I lean on you and challenge you all to have these conversations.
100%. Thank you, Pratik. Yeah, one thing I want to add to that also is I was reading some tips from a group called South Asians for Black Lives, and one of the things that they said that really affected me was they said, it's our responsibility to be the ones that have the patience to talk to folks who might think radically differently than we do. And I think often I kind of will let myself fall into like, this auntie is like so far from me, like I can't even deal with it. And I want to remind each of us, as I've had to remind myself, that we owe it to the Black folks around us to be the ones to be patient and guide people through this process.
Maya, Pratik, my name is Nagesh, and Sushmita is with me, and we are from New Jersey. So what we've done here in again, Pratik, to your point of the first bullet, just an hour before this meeting, we got a group of families together on another Zoom, and we discussed what people are feeling about this incident, what people are feeling about the protests. We went into an exploration of bias, how bias forms. Do we experience bias? Do we have bias ourselves? We continue the discussion into systemic bias, how it has been affecting minority communities in a negative way. It was a good communication and a good discussion with parents and also youngsters, both high schoolers and college kids who got together and had this discussion. And we plan to do this every week. So we are taking this forward, having the conversation with as many families as possible. And Pratik, to your point, the first gen were have still experienced the United States in many years. We're already talking to families who come in just a year, 2 years, 3 years back, and this is still like a shock. We can't believe this is happening here, right? So talking to them and explaining and understanding what they are going through, all of it very, very valuable for us.
Awareness. I would so awareness that this might happen and can happen to us as well.
I'm Triloki Pandey. I want to say one or two things. I'm very proud of Maya and Pratik and all of you or children who have spoken. And I'm really grateful to all of you for educating us. because I need not remind you that each one of us is a product of a particular historical experience, a particular cultural upbringing, and the circumstances in which we are really living our lives. So I was quite struck when I came to join the conversation, Maya bringing in the name of Bhimrao Ambedkar. In my generation, I grew up in 1950s in India, came to this country in 1963. Nobody really talked about Ambedkar. We really talked about Gandhi, Nehru, and others. And over a period of time, I have noticed that now Ambedkar has really surpassed Gandhi, Nehru, and other leaders of India. And more people are really talking about Ambedkar. There are just one or two things you should remember about Ambedkar. That Ambedkar came from an untouchable family in Maharashtra, was educated at Columbia here in 1920s, and then at the London School of Economics, with money came from a very prosperous businessman in Maharashtra, because he came from a very poor family. He wrote a paper in 1924 for one of the classes he was taking in anthropology on caste system in India. And for the first time, he was really trying to see the similarity between the caste system and race in this country. Both of them are classificatory systems. So from my point of view, it is erroneous to compare caste and race, because they are two different classificatory systems rooted in different kind of cultural and historical experiences. But still, it really depends at what level you, at what rung or at what level you are in the caste society. Those of us who come from the upper caste may not see the exploitative experiences of the Dalits and other lower caste people. But at that level, the analogy between caste and race is really quite meaningful. And Maya, you should really write a book bringing in that analogy to the forefront, because that's really quite critical at this time. When you are talking about police, police is the face of the state. And I don't see the state. I see the state when I encounter a policeman, both in India as well as here. I have spent more than 50 years here, but as a person of color, I'm still worried when a policeman encounters me or talks with me. Luckily, it has happened very few times in my 50 years here. But in India, coming from the kind of class background, caste background I do, I don't pay any attention to the police, because I know the police is not going to do anything for me anything to me, knowing my caste background, knowing my caste class background. So the context in which this interaction takes place, because the Indian state is still ruled by elites like us. Here we are a minority, and for the first time, we really try to look at our interaction with the kind of people we interact with here from that perspective, how a minority really feels about his or her status. So despite what I have achieved, I still feel nervous when I'm dealing with people here. I don't have that anxiety when I deal with people in India. So I'm grateful to you that you are asking us to become interested in what is happening in this society and what is happening to the people of color in this society, and in particular to the African American people, to the Black people. American thinking is in color coded terms: white, black, red, yellow. The brown has not yet made in American society. So to a large extent, you could easily see that those of us who are of that color, despite our material success and now to some extent political success as well, So far as the hierarchy of the society is concerned, we have a long way to go. And I admire our children who are really taking political interests in order to make their mark in this society. Economic success has to be converted in political success. Unless and until the state changes, all these things we are really talking about is not going to change. So the project of state making is extremely critical, and all of you, my request to all of you is try to participate in the state making. Unless and until you are able to change the color of the state, not much is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Trilok Uncle. Yeah, one thing I want to highlight from what you said, once again, very much want to encourage people to read Thenmore's article about her call to action to South Asians in the US. And she goes deep into how caste supremacy and upper caste folks in the US oftentimes end up supporting white supremacy. And she and her org, Equality Labs, recently, I think in the past 1 or 2 years, put out a study on caste in the United States. And it's easily searchable online. And that would be a really great place to start if you want to start thinking about the relationship. Like Trilok Uncle said, caste and race are not the same, but there is a relationship between caste supremacy and race and white supremacy. Okay, I'm gonna keep going.
One more question is there from Maya Nayak. You want to take it now or you want to take it later?
We can take it now, yeah.
Okay, so Maya Nayak is asking that, she's from Georgia Odia Society, and she's asking that what can youth do to keep this cause relevant and contribute to it? If we cannot donate to funds or attend protests, what actions can we take other than utilizing our social media to be part of this reform?
What a wonderful question to bring me to my next slide. I will provide a reading list with more things that we can look into and more things that we can do. But another already created resource out there was created by a group called South Asians for Black Lives. Their Instagram is right there. And then if you want to also go to this link, they have, it has a bunch of other links, which includes resources such as letters to aunties and uncles that can help you develop language for how you talk to people in your life about Black Lives Matter. I think it was Pratik who highlighted the importance of doing that because one thing that people around me say a lot that I really love is that this is life work. This is work that we do every day in our interactions with people because it is our everyday interactions that end with Black people getting harmed. So if we can shift our everyday actions, then we can also shift that harm. That link tree has a lot of great places where it can direct you to places to donate if that is what you want to do, but it can also direct you to reading resources and resources to help you develop language to talk to people in your life. Also, we had a little discussion earlier about what it means for us to think past calling the police. You might have seen a campaign going around called 8 Can't Wait, which was talking about police reform. And there are a lot of critiques of that campaign because it's gained a lot of popularity, but it is the research that went behind their statistic that these 8 reforms would lead to a 72% decrease in police killings was faulty. And also, I think we need to question why we would only want to reduce police killings and police brutality by 72%. Wouldn't we want to get rid of it altogether? And so if you are thinking through a lot of these questions about how can we move to a society that doesn't need police in the form that it exists today, I would encourage you to look at these 2 websites that I've put here. 8 to Abolition is just a really quick campaign that some police abolitionists have put together in response to 8 Can't Wait. And you can start there to look at resources of kind of how all of the things that we think police do in our society, what are other ways that we can achieve those goals. for example, reinvesting, just one example, reinvesting from police budgets into providing housing for everyone. And Critical Resistance is another group that their website has a lot of educational resources on thinking through, if not police, then what? Great. Okay. My next slide was for us to work together to create reflections and community action items, but we've already started doing that a lot. So I'll start writing some of the things that we had talked about, and if folks want to just ask more questions or like pose, here's what I'll ask you.
I wanted to add something to the action list, actually.
Yeah, totally. That's what we're doing.
My name's Swati. Again, I'm from LA. So I wanted to add that one of the things that you can do that makes a very big difference for Black people in real time who are being harassed by police officers is to insert yourself in the process, which means take out your phone, take a video of what's going on, including a timestamp, including video that shows your feet and how far you are from the situation, and communicate that you are witnessing what's going on, and ask for the person's contact information if that person is let go by the police, so that you can follow up and make sure that they were not harassed later. I mean, these are things that we can take on as people who are taking care of our neighbors and taking care of the people in our lives and who we come across. There are countless examples. Again, a lot of these videos are not making it off of social media, where a white person or an Asian person or a person of color who is not Black is able to do that, and the police walk away because they don't have real probable cause, or they don't have a warrant to do what they're doing and harassing a Black person. Right now, with all the protests, there's a lot of violence being directed toward non-Black people as well. So in general, you can do this, but specifically for Black people who are targeted, take out your phone and take a video, and I can, maybe you and I can connect later about how to put a pool of resources together. But there is a national upload where you can upload your video in real time, so that if something happens to your phone or a person is not able to, stay in touch with you, they can still refer to the video that you uploaded based on the timestamp of when you did it, and use it to help their case if there's no evidence against them, if there was no warrant, if they are being harassed, so that they can represent themselves in court or bring it to a public defender. So these are things that we can do that don't take anything from us. You can do it as a youth. If you're not 18, if you don't have the funds to donate, you can still insert yourself in the process, still from a safe distance even, but use your privilege that you have because you aren't being harassed at the same rates, and take a video and say something. I think that's really, really important. And it's something that we can all feel proud to step in and say, I'm actually doing something about this. And the other thing I wanted to say is that a lot of our community is in medicine. And I talked to my dad about this. He's not on the call, but one of the things that's really abhorrent to him is to think that people he is treating are being harmed by the state, and being harmed by police who are there to protect and serve, which is one of the things that he commits to as a physician, is to protect and do no harm. So we have to think about why we make other choices in our lives and apply that to the justice we're willing to support in our communities and as citizens of this country. I just wanted to say that real quick, but Maya, maybe you and I can connect about how to pool resources and create sort of a resource sheet to share around. The South Asians for Black Lives, they have a letter that has been translated in most Indian languages, but has not yet been translated in Oriya. So if one of the elders or someone who speaks Oriya and can write Oriya fluently could translate that, that would be a really good action point to do as well. But yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now, but I just wanted to say those things. Thanks.
Absolutely. Swati is your name? Okay, great. Yeah, those are two really great points. One thing I thought of when you were talking about your father and his experience with seeing the care he extends to his patients not being extended by the state. Another way, I want us to also think about ways that when our community members are not educated on anti-racist practices, we can reproduce racism in our jobs even when we don't think so. So medical racism is something that happens a lot, right? And and that manifests in a lot of different ways. One example is Black women not being believed by their doctors when they're talking about their pain, and then later having medical complications because they were not given the care they needed. So let's remember that our community, as we have a lot of power, we have so many people who are educated in a lot of different ways. We have doctors, we have engineers, and we have people who are interacting with people a lot. We have people have power.
Maya, hi everyone. I just want to say I completely agree with what Nagesh said about this issue, and I just wanted to put in a couple of points that I think we should all think about. And based on what I've heard from the conversation as well as the group chat so far, we've been putting a lot of the onus and the responsibility on the police itself. But the problem is, I think there's institutional bias in, as Nagesh said, in every institution of the government. Like, for example, when a lot of these similar situations happen, the police may kill innocent Black people or innocent people of other minorities. But the problem is they get away with what they do. That's because the judicial aspect of law is also biased, inherently biased towards white people and against minorities. So I think we really need to focus on the legislature aspect of it and put in politicians that support dismantling of these biased laws and policies that currently exist in the government.
Hello, my name is Sri Gopal Mohanty from Canada. I have one caution to you. Because the event has happened now, I think the country has been extremely energized to do something. But the real question is to sustain it. Because I have seen gun control problem, occupy cities, many movements have died out within a very short period. And the government or the establishment has a way to diffuse the problem, and people go on, they become busy in their own job, particularly you people, most of them might be students or being busy in finding a job or whatever. Can you sustain this? Or if you cannot, find a way to see that this idea remains in people's mind. That is the real challenge.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. You're totally right that there's this momentum right now, which is what allowed us to all be here together. Maybe we can think about, someone who was here from New Jersey let us know that they and their group had committed to doing weekly meetings. Maybe right now or in the next couple of days, we can commit to having these sessions on a regular basis, maybe weekly. And I think this was broadcast when the event was put out, but I'll just say it again. I want everyone who wants to help with this to help with this. So if you think that like you have the knowledge or you're willing to research one of the topics we've talked about to do a deeper presentation on that, and you want to present next week, like just get in contact with me, let me know, and we can 100% make that happen. So yeah, let's find ways that we can use this momentum to make it sustainable.
Hey Maya, Sunil uncle here. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, Maya, whatever talk about is your second bullet, this is a very powerful bullet because I have actually heard, exactly what happened to George Floyd. Remember, in case of George Floyd, one guy goes with a fake $20 bill that was not allowed, and this kid comes out, right? After 15 minutes, George Floyd goes with this $20 bill, and knowingly, I think that knowingly the bill was exchanged, and the store worker, not the owner, called the cop. And the shop is owned by, because let me tell you, and the shop is owned by Muslim, okay, Arab Muslim, okay. What I've started thinking lately, that we non-whites also have a racial bias towards blacks. That's a way, it's like between us, we are also biased. I think we need to look at that very carefully.
Yeah, 100%. Let's try to with that particular instance with George Floyd. the person who called the cops was actually one of their workers, and
Yes.
the shop has since stated that they are horrified by what happened, and they have actually since made a plan where they no longer will work with the police and they no longer call the police.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're 100% right. All of us as non-Black folks need to be thinking about that, but also let's look to them as an example of people who have been changed by this moment and have committed to not
Yes.
calling the police, as we all should.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Maya. Oh.
Did you want to go ahead?
Okay, I'll go first. Thanks. Hi, I'm Aradhya. I'm a student in New Jersey, and I'm actually Nagesh's son. But I wanted to say again, thanks so much for having this, and I'm really impressed that this is showing up. This is the first time I think I've seen something like this happening through OSA. And as a minority, but also as a minority which experiences something very different from what African Americans experience in the United States, we have kind of a niche role compared to what's showing up in the media. So I wanted to know, and I'm really glad this is appearing now, that we're able to take a stance and we're able to take action on this. I feel like this might be a time to transform how we communicate with with politics in the United States as a whole as a community. So I want to ask Maya if you think, other than and this is fantastic, pulling towards this and organizing these kinds of presentations is fantastic, but how else do you think we can start interacting with this as a community rather than just as individuals?
That's a really great question, and one that I think I would need help answering, because my parents are pretty involved in the community, but I have not been in the past 5 or 6 years. This is maybe the first OSA thing I've been to since I was a kid. So yeah, that's a great question that I think I'll have to reflect back to the group. To me, what I am willing to commit to doing is being available for things like this as often as people are willing. If we're down to do it once a week, that would be awesome. But beyond that, I'll reflect that question back to the group if anyone has any ideas.
Hi, Maya. This is Ananya. I am one of the youth leaders of the Georgia OSA Society, alongside Anushka, who's also on this call. I just really wanted to emphasize the other point on how there's a lot of there's a lot of racism in the South Asian community as well. Wanted to share something of one of my Filipino friends had written an article about how Asians have also contributed to racism unintentionally, for the most part, I'm hoping, but that the mindset that it's not our problem has caused a lot of issues, that being non-racist is not the only, is not okay. It has to be anti-racist and you have to work towards it. And she was immediately met with a message from her grandma telling her to focus on her studies, focus on herself rather than participating in such political and such sensitive issues. So this really emphasizes the fact that racism is not just a white versus Black thing. That's not the case at all. It has been going on across the entire country, and the mindset that it's not our problem, it's their problem it's not true, because this itself was a form of racism. And I think that really reflects that the conversation must start in our house before you go posting on social media or you try other things. I think it's very important to spread awareness, which is why thank you so much that you're putting this together for OSA and for the society to inform them, because I know I learned a lot from this event. Even though I've attended our history classes in school and everything, there's so much that I learned from this itself.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Someone have a question?
Oh, hi Maya. Is it okay if I say something?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, my name is Anushka. I'm the other youth leader of the Georgia OSA Society. I wanted to talk about something that I think which more pertains to the younger generation of kids on this call, or just in general, which is the origin of the N-word.
Oh, fuck me.
I think this is an extremely important conversation to have, especially now. I think this is something that should have been addressed a very, very long time ago. There's a lot of internalized racism in our schools. So I encourage all parents on this call, tell everyone else, please have those difficult conversations with your children, educate them about the long, devastating history behind that word. It's incredibly important that you know its meaning, you know its effect. It is not okay to say. There's no justifiable excuse for that. So sorry if this was a little bit of like an out there sort of thing, but I think it's very important to address that issue as well.
Definitely an important one.
I just want to second everything Anushka said. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead. No, thank you.
I just wanted to say I second everything that Anushka said. And again, I think because, and I'm not just trying to put it on, where geography, where we live, but Anushka and Ananya are from the South, from Georgia,
Yeah,
I'm from
Georgia,
Tennessee.
yep.
Like we hear this a lot. We hear it from white people a lot. I work a lot in rural communities where I hear it a ton. And so I think that our community sometimes think it's okay to use it because people who are not Black also use it. So I really do appreciate you bringing that up. And I also want to tie one other piece to that. For all the uncles and aunties on this call, I have so much respect for you for joining this call. And I want my action item to be that I understand that the younger generation is further along when it comes to knowledge about this issue and we know more. And so my responsibility is to treat you all with grace. And I promise to be patient with each and every one of you if you all are willing to have that conversation with me. And so I just think that an action item should be treat those who are learning this with grace, but also hold to your moral standards. So if we hear the N-word, to correct that immediately, but to do it without attacking and first, assuming that it's out of ignorance and not out of hate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Pratik, this is Nagesh again. So thank you for saying that. I have been trying to crack this gap of OSA adults and OSA youth for 3-4 years right now. For whatever reason, right, as you guys have experienced, once you come out of school and you go on to college, you just go on and OSA sort of fades in your lives. And here is the parents, at one point we would drag you to the functions to say, let's sing and dance and get on the stage. But over a period of time, we no longer can do that. And it's very difficult to find common ground where we should all meet and talk. And I'm glad this is happening today. I think one common ground, as you guys are talking right at this last bullet that Maya just wrote, as I can't share names, but in our previous meeting, one of the parents learned that, every child will go through some kind of a racial exposure or experience through school. And it's traumatic just to know that your child is going to experience something like this, right? So I think that one common ground that is there is for all of you to step in and assist parents in talk to how do we talk to the younger children about this as they go through school, as they hear language, as they behave. How do we help them get there and manage themselves through those situations? I think it's a great common ground where you guys can get involved with the adults who have younger children going through school.
And I will say for all the OSA leadership on here, if we have workshops like this at OSA, if Maya is called to be a facilitator at a physical OSA, I will buy a plane ticket. If you guys go to Hawaii, if you guys do it in Odisha, I will go. I want to be very clear that this is the kind of stuff that our generation wants to talk about and wants to be at OSA. Please do what you can to incorporate this stuff in. I'm part of the Nashville team. OSA was supposed to be in Nashville this year, and we were trying to do a couple of workshops on identity and things like that. But we got pushback about, no, we need to learn about how to apply to colleges and things like that. And those are important. I'm not saying no, but this is the kind of stuff, these are the kinds of things that what we're talking about that's going to get the youth, especially American-born youth, to be a part of this movement. I am 100% sure, I can guarantee you that you will see a rise in OSA membership, you will see a rise in youth leadership if you guys start incorporating these kinds of topics. And so I really challenge you all to continue to do that.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I
think
totally agree with what Pratik just said. Totally agree with that.
Me, can I take this? I think I don't know. We planned for 1.5 hours, and it's going very high and very nice energy. And this is just part one of the movement. This is just part one. We just started. So let's keep the momentum on this one, right? And previously we discussed with Maya, and Maya proposed, and also Maya already openly proposed it, like, you know, can we do next weekend, next Sunday or sometime, right? So, and I see that attendance is still at 70 on Zoom, and I don't know on YouTube how many, I think about 88 on YouTube. So from OSA perspective, Kukuapa will definitely answer that one. But I think, you know, what we are looking at is to find what excites you, and let's keep a forum like this so that we know what excites the youth, right? And I definitely thanks Maya to bring it up so that we know that's the attraction point. We don't want to lose it. No way. There are different levels of people in OSA focusing on different things, and different people are pursuing different things. So let's keep this very exclusive for youth group, and you know, that we have very less time. I think, you know, let's do next Sunday, and then we'll keep the details next weekend sometime, right, Maya? To have this conversation continue. And I don't want to conclude at this point, but, you know, just to make sure that Maya, can you just put your, if you don't mind, can you put your email ID on the, so that they see you and your contacts? Yes, awesome. So this is Maya's email ID, maya.s.acharya@gmail.com. And also we formed a group not to publish her email ID in a public setting. You know, we kept like OSA youth group at gmail.com just as a starting point. And let's do it next weekend, and please join us with your ideas. And Maya is going to invite that other people who wants to collaborate and then take it as a together. It was Maya's initial thought to go forward and then start it on. The goal was to bring more people to the panel and then have a nice viewpoint and how to take it to the next level. So Maya, do you want to say something? Sorry, I interrupted you all. There is one more question, but I think, you know what? Let's keep one question for next time to the beginning. It's a tough one, and it's from Megha Joshi and Pratyush Mahapatra about policing. Can we defund the police? It's a big question, right? So I'm not going to ask it now at this end moment. Let's keep that for the next time and then think about it and come back.
I was just wanted to ask, add one more thing to Ashok, what you're saying. So Maya, thank you very much for doing this. Actually, it's a great opportunity for us to be educated about the whole thing. I think we just take it for granted that a lot of things are happening in the right way. But this is definitely a wake-up call for all of us to listen about things and then try to contemplate and think about it, because this is one of the other learning that we are getting in the COVID-19 situation, apart from like how the nature needs to be healed. I think one of the last point that we talked about, the leadership issue, I think that's a great point that we need to really think about how we can really promote the leadership at different levels. Right now, if you look at the whole world, the country at different levels, we need more inspiring leaders, more transformational leaders. And I have been leading this kind of conversation also in different countries right now to promote leadership. So my use is mostly mindfulness, meditation, yoga, nonviolence. So a lot of things. I think issues like this needs multi-pronged strategies, not just talking about police or the judicial system. We also need to think about like, you know, how we can really harness the power of our mind. There is a lot of power that we all have. We haven't used them. So I think if you're open to any of these mindfulness conversations, I would love to guide any small group that you could lead a parallel session to bring more peace and harmony in our society. So I just wanted to keep this forum going on and add few more elements, including mindfulness and meditation also. Thank you.
Maya, would it be possible to create like a Facebook group or something where we can upload resources in one pool, so that way we don't have to deal with emails and that kind of thing, and people can check in as frequently as they like? I think that would be helpful.
Totally. I've started a drive that I'll finalize putting some stuff in there. and I'll make it available to anyone with the link. So you don't need to be shared on it. Just if someone sends you the link to the drive, you can access that there. Yeah.
Also,
Okay.
Maya, thank you. Also, I want to share with you everyone. Recently, I've been getting a lot of emails from youths from all over the USA. We are so glad. This is like something you are going to educate us. We completely depend on you. So what we are planning, we are encouraging everyone to participate. There is your email beside Maya's email. Please access to that email, and let's create a group where we all can discuss, and from there we will also know where we should step in, or what should we do, what should be our contribution. Because honestly, I am listening to all of you and I'm like, wow, I didn't know such thing. All we think, okay, you never hate anyone, this, that, but inside us, we don't know what is racism exactly all about. So thank you for educating us, Maya. I think the journey begins now. We will have, as Maya is telling, this is just the first segment of the series. We are going to continue with this such kind of educational learning. So with that, Maya, you may say your last few words, and we'll again continue.
Kuku Auntie, is it time to close it, or should we keep it going?
I think I just
Can
have
I add one
more
thing before you close it, please, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Yeah, this is Ritanjali again from Georgia. I just wanted to, a little bit earlier, we talked about saying, how do we tap into our youth? I think many a times the parents think that we know all the answers and we know how to engage the youth and all that stuff. We really need to invest where their passion is. This is an example of Maya's passion is here, and then she pulled it together. We all showed interest, and that's how we can pull the youth in. To going back to Ananya and Anushka, they are the youth leaders in Georgia. We just had an event last week, and it was a socio-cultural event, and they reached out saying, hey, Auntie, can we talk about something that we are passionate about? We gave them 2 minutes, the top of the hour when we started the event, and they were so emotional about the Black Lives Matters and everything. The whole community was up with them. They got everybody energized and everything, saying, oh my God, there's so much going on. Our youth are upset. Let's do something about it. So that's how we can engage. And I really, really applaud you, Maya, for what you just did. Excellent job. Thank you. And OSA, thank you so much for promoting us.
Thanks for that segue. That brings me to the next topic, which is, should we have weekly meetings? Because I know that the Georgia group reached out. Thanks, Maya, for starting this journey. We want to continue on this. Should it be a weekly meeting when we meet next Sunday at the same time, or is it preferred to move on 1 hour ahead so it can better fit to East Coast? What do we think?
I would highly suggest once a week.
I would suggest, yeah, I would hope that let's do it again on the weekend, but, maybe we can move it earlier in the day. I know there were some conflicts today, but maybe next week we can move it earlier so it's more accessible for folks on the East Coast. Yeah, does that sound okay to people? We can figure out the logistics.
And the same format, everything is okay? Any feedback that I can take and work on?
I think it worked well for me.
I think, yes, I agree. I think this is a really great outlet. This is a really great platform. I agree. I wish we could do it more than once a week, since it's just such an immediate issue that we do need to address. But I get that with time and everything, weekly is probably the perfect balance between everything. Thank you all.
Yeah, and in between those weekly things, you can be taking on those other actions in the list we created together. Yeah, okay. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm so
can I quickly just say one thing?
Sure.
Sorry. So lastly, I would really encourage all of the adults and all the kids on here to support your local Black-owned businesses, Black-owned musicians, artists. Right now, they really need help. There's a lot of small Black-owned businesses, especially in the Atlanta area, for anyone living here who need help raising money to restore their businesses that have been affected by protests. So please, I would encourage you all to, educate yourself on the various Black restaurants and businesses in your area and contribute money to them, donate money, go eat at their places, any sort of help works for them,
100%. Thank you, Anushka. Maybe if you can, anyone who has access to lists of those in their local area, I can add those to the drive as well.
For sure.
Okay, great. Thank you all so much. Thank you to OSA and OSA Cal for having this happen. Kuku Auntie, thank you so much for giving me the space to do this. And yeah, I'm looking forward to speaking with
We
everyone.
are privileged, Maya.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Maya. This was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah,
Thank you,
please
everyone.
to talk with you all too, as soon as you want to.
Thank you, everybody. I think it's time to say goodbye, good night, and we'll see